Hello, fancy seeing you here. How are you? I have been away for a while now, just dealing with life and the mind and all that stuff, you know. But I am feeling better now. I'm feeling stronger, and I like to make the most of these moments when I come through something and it feels like springtime or something. It's actually autumn in Australia, but that's okay. So, I have some science articles I want to read for you guys. These ones I had last year prepared, but hadn't gone around to it yet. These ones are all about time travel, things like that. So the first one we have is called, Does Time Really Fly When You're Having Fun? Can you count off 5 seconds in your head? If you did and then checked it with a stopwatch, you'd probably be pretty close. But have you ever wondered how your brain pulls off this amazing trick? Time perception is one of the brain's big mysteries. We've got a good handle on the millisecond timing needed for fine motor skills and the 24-hour circadian rhythms, but how we actually perceive the passage of seconds and minutes, what's called interval timing, remains pretty foggy. For starters, there's no specific sensory organ for time perception like we have for touch, taste, or smell. Also, there's no clinical condition solely defined by a lack of time perception, making it tough to study. What we really need is someone who's as bad at timing as amnesiacs are at memory, says John Weirden from Keele University in the UK. But no such person exists. Some researchers think there's a reason for this. Warren Meck from Duke University believes timing is so fundamental to our thinking that our brains have multiple backup systems. If the main clock is damaged, these backups step in, which is why it's so hard to find anyone who can't perceive time at all. I think we all know one or two people that don't seem to be able to perceive time. We've probably all been that person as well at some point in our life. As for the biological basis of these clocks, nobody really knows. The best explanation we have is the pacemaker accumulator model. It suggests that the brain has a pacemaker that emits regular pulses. These pulses are stored in an accumulator and counted to estimate elapsed time. The problem in this model is that while it fits with observations of time perception, it lacks specifics. It doesn't explain what the pacemaker is, where it's located, what the pulses are, where they're stored, or how they're counted. Various ideas have been proposed, but the model remains largely theoretical. A full theory of time perception will also need to explain why it's so flexible. Cocaine, amphetamine, and nicotine speed up time perception, while some antipsychotic drugs slow it down. All these substances mess with the neurotransmitter dopamine. People with dopamine system disorders like Parkinson's disease or schizophrenia also experience distortions in their perception of time. I wonder what that feels like. Is it sort of like where 3 hours would pass, but it only felt like a few minutes, that kind of thing? So that would be very strange. Time can stretch and shrink in other ways too. It seems to slow down when you're scared and flies when you're having fun. Time also seems to pass more quickly as you age. The key to these puzzles might be how we think about time perception. We're under the illusion that time is just one thing, but we can take various aspects of time and manipulate them separately, says David Eagleman from Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. This suggests that our perception of time might have several components. One of the best examples of the different ways we perceive time is an experiment where Eagleman had participants drop backwards from a tall tower into a safety net 30 meters below. As they fell, they looked at a wrist-worn LED display showing a number that alternated with its negative image 20 times a second. Usually this is too fast to see, but if brain time really slows down in scary situations, they should have been able to read the number. Although participants reported that the fall seemed to last about 35% longer than the 2.5 seconds it actually took, none could read the number. Eagleman suggests that time seems to slow down when you're falling because intense or novel situations grab our attention, causing our brains to soak up more detail. He's shown that when the brain sees the same image repeatedly and then a new image, the new one seems to last longer, even though it's displayed for the same amount of time. The brain also uses more energy when processing the new image. The length of time something seems to last appears to correlate with the amount of energy the brain uses to record an event, Eagleman says. This might also explain why time speeds up as we age. For kids, everything is new and their brains are processing vast amounts of information. As we get older and our brains learn the world's rules, they record less information. It's like looking back at the end of a summer and realizing you don't have much footage, so it seems to have gone by more quickly, says Eagleman. So maybe we can stretch our lifetimes by packing in as many different and exciting experiences as possible. The only trouble is finding the time. Yep. Yeah, I think that I have a good internal clock. I seem to be able to, when I lose track of time and what time it is, I seem to be able to call it like pretty accurately. Every now and then I'll be way off base, like I'll think it's 8 p.m. and it's actually 11:30. But yeah, I don't know what that is. So the next article is time travel possible? Time travel. It's a concept straight out of science fiction, right? Think H.G. Wells and his classic, The Time Machine, written way back in the late 1800s. And yet here we are, still without a functioning time machine. But don't give up hope just yet. Recent discoveries keep nudging us closer to the possibility, forward or backward. Time travel is actually embedded in the basics of general relativity. According to Einstein, time moves more slowly in strong gravity. That means you age a tad bit slower in a bungalow than in a skyscraper because you're closer to the Earth's stronger gravitational pull. This concept of personal time warps shows that to create a time machine you'd need to link two areas where time flows differently. Imagine Earth and the edge of a black hole where gravity is incredibly strong and time creeps by. Start 2 clocks on Monday, one on Earth and one by the black hole. By the time it's Friday on Earth, it's still Wednesday by the black hole. If you could instantly travel from Earth to near the black hole, you'd effectively travel back from Friday to Wednesday. Presto, time travel. But can we actually do this? In theory, yes. Quantum theory tells us that space-time is a mess of tiny shortcuts known as wormholes. A quick trip through one could land you light years away or years in the past or future. It's possible that ghostly particles called neutrinos might already be making such journeys. For the rest of us, though, there are practical hurdles. To use a wormhole for time travel, it needs to connect the specific times and places you want to travel between. This might mean dragging one end to the nearest black hole. Even then, you'd have to inflate the tiny wormhole to a size big enough for a person and keep it open, which is tricky since wormholes tend to snap shut almost immediately. You'd need a type of matter with repulsive gravity to prop them open, and we're not sure if such exotic matter exists. Plus, creating a usable tunnel would require an enormous amount of energy. Think the combined output of a large fraction of the stars in our galaxy for a whole year. Even if we overcome these challenges, such a time machine wouldn't take us back to key moments in history. If we find a wormhole, it marks the first moment time travelers could visit. So if you're dreaming of a dinosaur safari, you'll need a time machine left on Earth by extraterrestrials at least 65 million years ago. Still, our own time machine could do some fascinating things. Once built, future civilizations could visit us. But that brings up the grandfather paradox. Could someone go back and kill an ancestor, making their own existence impossible? Quantum physics might have an answer. Quantum physicists have been teleporting particles by copying their information and transferring it to another distant particle. Seth Lloyd from MIT and I can't say that name, A. Steinberg from the University of Toronto showed that quantum rules allow for this teleportation in time as well as space. In their experiments, they set up photons to travel back in time and flip their state, which would prevent them from traveling back in the first place. They found that if a photon was set to kill its grandfather, either the time travel or the state flip always failed, preserving cause and effect. That's pretty fascinating. This concept, known as chronology protection, suggests that the laws of physics are designed to maintain logical cause and effect, as noted by Stephen Hawking. Despite the challenges, the door to time travel remains open, and who knows what future discoveries might bring us closer to stepping through it. I've been watching old episodes of The Simpsons lately. Do you remember the one where Homer finds a time machine? I can't remember how. He goes back to the Jurassic era, I think, and then he tries to not change anything, but he keeps messing up and swatting bugs and things like that, or falling on creatures, he just falls over and falls on them, and he keeps warping back to present day until finally he lands on a version that everything looks normal, but they all have those lizard tongues, and he's just close enough. It's such a Homer way of dealing with things. Okay, so the next one we have is called Life on the Time Zone Borderline. Time is money, right? But these days the hands on the clock mean a lot more than that. Clocks don't just tell us when to get up, they keep our electricity flowing, phones connected, and planes and ships on course. But believe it or not, something as simple as "what's the time" has stirred up a lot of drama around the world. Before the 19th century, every community set their own local time. Then in 1876, a Scottish-born engineer named Sanford Fleming had a bright idea: standardize world time and divide the globe into separate time zones. By 1884, his concept of standard time was officially adopted, but it took another 35 years for nations to agree on a set of time zones covering the entire world. The result, 24 neat 15-degree wedges, each marking a 1-hour time shift. However, no one was put in charge of these zones, so over the years their neat edges were pulled out of shape to suit various interests. Nowhere is this more evident than the international date line running down the Pacific. Take Kiribati, a nation spread over 13 islands near the equator. Originally, the international date line split this island group, making its capital, Tarawa, 24 hours ahead of the rest of Kiribati. This meant that today had two different meanings within the same country. A little bit ridiculous. In 1995, Kiribati decided to fix this by shifting all its islands into the same time zone, creating a 3,000-kilometre bulge in the dateline. Not everyone was thrilled. Some neighbours, like Fiji, saw it as a gimmick to attract tourists for the Millennium celebrations. Samoa, about 1,200 kilometres south, was particularly upset. They already lost 2 business days each week with Australia and New Zealand due to the 21-hour time difference. Kiribati's shift further isolated Samoa from its northern neighbours. So in 2011, Samoa decided to jump across the dateline too. December 29th, 2011 simply didn't exist for them. They went straight from December 28th to December 30th to be in sync with their trading partners. While some argue over what day it is, others get heated over 3,600 seconds, specifically daylight saving time, introduced during World War I by Germany to save fuel by shifting an hour of daylight from morning to evening. Daylight saving time has caused numerous conflicts since then. A memorable one was in 1998 when nearly 2,000 students at Ohio University rioted after learning daylight savings time would cut their drinking time by an hour. But nowhere has daylight savings caused more trouble than in Indiana. Indiana straddles the boundary between the central and eastern time zones, and since the late 1940s there's been a fierce debate between urban dwellers and rural residents over daylight savings. Farmers hate it because they lose morning light, while businesses love it for smoother dealings with cities like Chicago and New York. In 1972, a new law aimed to resolve this by requiring Eastern time zone countries to skip daylight savings while making it mandatory in the Central Zone. Many countries ignored this, leading to a mess where bus timetables were a riddle. Oh my god. And some kids arrived at school before they left home. Finally, in 2006, a statewide daylight savings time was adopted, and Governor Mitch Daniels assured everyone, "Nothing will ever be more confusing than the world we're leaving behind." Maybe so, but Hoosiers love a good fight, and now a group called the Central Time Coalition is pushing to move the entire state to Central Time. The real mystery? How Indiana's clock warriors find the time to get anything else done. Yeah, we just switched daylight savings recently. And I don't like it because we're heading into winter, and so it makes the day end so much sooner. Sometimes, like when we're in the middle of winter, I'll get home, 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon, and it's already dark. So I don't know if we're in daylight savings now or out of it, but I prefer whatever it is over summer. So it makes the days feel a bit longer, or the daylight lasts longer. This next article I have is called "The Tribe Without Time." I want to live with that tribe. I want to get out of the rat race, y'all. Other times I like being in the rat race, I think. Okay, we all experience time, right? But does everyone think about time the same way? Turns out different cultures have their own unique ways of organizing and naming time intervals. The minutes and hours we use actually come from the ancient Babylonians, and while various cultures have different calendars, using hours, days, and months to orient ourselves in time feels as fundamental as using landmarks and routes to navigate space. Space and time seem closely connected in our minds. We talk about events happening in relation to temporal landmarks, just like we locate objects in space. Think about phrases like "in the summer" or "on Friday." We also describe events and people moving along a timeline, such as "winter is approaching" or "she's coming up to her exams." This way of using spatial language to talk about time is common across many languages, leading cognitive scientists to believe it's a universal trait of the human mind. But this idea was challenged by research with an indigenous Amazonian community, the Amandawa, conducted by Wani Sampaio and Vera de Silva Sina from the Federal University Rondônia in Brazil, along with George Zinkin from the University of Portsmouth, UK, or Portsmouth, UK. Sorry, y'all. The Amandawa, living in a remote forest area of Brazil, were first contacted by the outside world in 1986. They traditionally farm, hunt, and fish, and their language has only 4 numbers, so they don't use clock time or a numerically based calendar. For the Amandawa, time is marked by the sun's position and daily activities like rising, eating, and working. They have no words for month or year, and longer intervals are named based on the dry and rainy seasons. There is no abstract term for time, and when asked to translate the Portuguese word tempo, they use quara, meaning sun. They don't celebrate birthdays either. People go through named life stages and take on new names based on gender and clan with each transition. When researchers tried to get the Amandawa to use space-time metaphors like the dry season is coming, they found the Amandawa don't use them. It's not that they don't understand such expressions. Bilingual Amandawa speakers grasp these metaphors in Portuguese. Their language even uses expressions like the path goes to the riverbank. But when it comes to time, they reject spatial metaphors. Instead of talking about the motion of the dry season, they'll talk about the movement of the sun. So what's going on here? The researchers believe that because the Amandawa lack a calendar or number-based time system, they don't have the concept of abstract time. Their intervals are structured around the natural and social world's rhythms rather than being segments of an independent timeline. Without this abstract time, they don't metaphorically move around in it or place events in it. For the Amandawa, time is identical to the events and routines of everyday life rather than a separate technology of the mind. Amandawa time might seem strange to us, but if we take a broader view of human culture, it's actually us who are the exception. Small-scale societies, organized around face-to-face encounters, have existed much longer than hierarchically structured, socially differentiated ones. Traditional societies can manage without calendars and clocks. Our experience of time owes as much to cultural invention as it does to the workings of the brain. It would be weird to exist without calendars and clocks. I think that I would worry sometimes that I was like wasting time, and how would I know? But you just wouldn't even worry about that if you were raised that way. That's pretty cool to me. The next article is called About Time, the Mystery We All Know and Don't. Time is one of those things that feels totally normal until you stop and think about it. We use it every day, plan our schedules around it, and even complain about not having enough of it. But if you try to define what time actually is, things get weird fast. The 4th century philosopher St. Augustine put it best. What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to one who asks, I know not. Since Augustine's time, we've made huge strides in understanding time, even if it still manages to confuse us. Einstein's theory of relativity, for instance, showed that time isn't a fixed thing. It slows down if you're moving really fast. And whether 2 events happen at the same time depends on your perspective. Space and time, They're not separate, but woven together into what scientists call a four-dimensional block universe. Then there's the big picture. Cosmologists have figured out that time had a starting point, the Big Bang, but whether it has an ending is still up for debate. Neuroscience has thrown in its own curveballs, showing that our brains actually rearrange our memories in fractions of a second, sometimes altering the order of events in our minds. Even weirder, brain scans can detect decisions we're going to make before we're even aware we've made them. That raises all sorts of unsettling questions about free will. Philosophers, of course, have a lot to say about all of this. Some argue that the idea of time flowing is just an illusion. Others point out that nothing objectively makes now special compared to any other moment. And then quantum theory gets involved, suggesting that every moment in time is kind of like a parallel universe, affecting us differently but existing nonetheless. Oh, and time travel? Not as impossible as it sounds, at least mathematically speaking. With all these discoveries, you'd think we'd have time figured out by now. But every time we answer one question, new and even stranger ones pop up. For example, quantum mechanics and Einstein's relativity don't really get along when it comes to how space and time should work together. That's a big problem if you want a theory of everything that explains how the universe truly operates. Another headache, the arrow of time. The laws of physics don't actually prefer past over future, but in real life, time definitely seems to move in one direction. Causes come before effects. Computers process inputs before spitting out results, and a muddy glove doesn't magically clean itself while charging up the electricity grid. On top of that, things like the universe expanding, ripples in water spreading out, and even how we experience time all seem to align in a way that scientists are still trying to fully grasp. The fact that so many of these puzzles seem connected suggests that a major breakthrough in one area could unlock all the answers. Or maybe it'll just open the door to even deeper mysteries. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that every answer in science comes with a whole new set of questions. And honestly, that might be the most exciting part. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's kind of like, if you're a really curious person, you want to know the answers. But sometimes if you get the answer, if you think of a magic trick, and then you figure out how it's done, it's not exciting anymore. Whereas I wouldn't think life would be like that. I would think that life would just be endlessly interesting and there'd always be something to be curious about. So it is good to get answers in life and about the way the universe works, but I would never imagine that human beings would be able to really figure all of that out, This next article is why time only moves forward and why that's so weird. Try this. Walk a few steps forward, then turn around and walk back. Easy, right? Now try doing the same thing with time. Let a few seconds pass, then reverse them. No luck? Of course not. Unlike space, time only flows in one direction, from past to future. That seems natural enough. But if you really dig into the laws of physics, things get strange. Nothing in those laws actually says time has to move forward. Take Newton's law of motion. They work just as well whether you're predicting where a ball will land in the future or where it was thrown from in the past. The forces that control particles don't change whether you swap the past for the future. The really strange thing is that the laws of physics, which should define what we see in the world, work just as well forwards as backwards, says Dean Rickles, a philosopher of science at the University of Sydney. There shouldn't be an arrow of time. So where does time's arrow come from? One big clue lies in entropy, the measure of disorder in a system. Everything around us is made of particles, particles that are constantly moving and rearranging. The more ways you can shuffle them without changing the big picture, the higher the entropy. A puddle of water, for example, has high entropy because its molecules can be arranged in countless ways. An ice crystal, though, has low entropy since its structure is much more precise. Statistically speaking, high entropy states are just way more likely than low ones. That's why ice melts into water, but you'll never see a puddle spontaneously freeze on a warm day. If you did, you'd assume you were watching a video in reverse, almost as if time itself had flipped directions. This idea is tied to one of the core principles of physics, the second law of thermodynamics, which says that entropy in the universe can never decrease. Sounds like a solid explanation for time's arrow, right? Not quite. The second law just tells us that high entropy states are more likely. It doesn't explain why time moves forward instead of back. If time were truly symmetrical, the universe 5 minutes ago should look just as random as the universe 5 minutes from now. The best explanation, the universe just happened to start in an incredibly unlikely low entropy state. If it hadn't, time wouldn't have an arrow at all, and nothing interesting, like us, would exist. Time's arrow depends on the fact that the universe started in a very peculiar state, says physicist Carlo Rovelli. Had it started in a random state, there'd be nothing distinguishing the future from the past. Observations support this idea. The cosmic microwave background, the leftover radiation from the Big Bang, shows that early on, matter and energy were spread out extremely smoothly. That might look like high entropy, but when you factor in gravity, it's actually the opposite. Gravity likes to clump things together, meaning the most natural high entropy state would be black holes everywhere, not a smooth universe. So why did we start with low entropy? One explanation is cosmic inflation. Right after the Big Bang, the universe expanded insanely fast, stretching everything out and smoothing out any wrinkles. Right after the Big Bang, the universe expanded insanely fast, stretching everything out and smoothing out any wrinkles. That seems to solve the problem, except inflation itself requires an incredibly unlikely setup. Essentially, we've pushed the mystery one step back. Why did inflation start in such a low entropy state? One idea is that inflation didn't happen just once. Maybe the inflation field, the energy field driving inflation, started in a messy, high entropy state, randomly creating patches of low entropy. Some of these patches became smooth universes like ours, while others remained chaotic. This leads to the concept of a multiverse, where countless universes exist, each with its own conditions. I'm also going to do a video on the multiverse as well. If we live in a multiverse, then some universes will have arrows of time and some won't, says physicist Sean Carroll. We shouldn't be surprised to find ourselves in one that does, because that's the only kind of universe that can support life. Even if the multiverse theory explains time's arrow, there are still plenty of unanswered questions. How does entropy fit into quantum mechanics? Why do quantum systems always seem to pick one outcome when we measure them, even though their equations allow for multiple possibilities? And why do our brains only remember the past, never the future? Understanding how time's arrow manifests in things like evolution, memory, complexity, and even consciousness is still a massive open question, says Carroll. Maybe one day we'll get all the answers, assuming, of course, that the future actually exists. I think entropy is a little out of my level of understanding. Still interesting though. The next article I have is Quantum Time Travel. Can we send particles to the past? Time loops have fascinated sci-fi fans for years, but could they actually be real? According to some physicists, the answer might be yes, at least on a quantum level. While we won't be stepping into a time machine anytime soon, new research suggests that particles might be able to interact with the past, and that could change how we understand time itself. Back in 1991, physicist David Deutsch proposed an idea for quantum time loops, officially known as closed time-like curves, CTCs. His approach was based on the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, where a particle traveling to the past could jump into a parallel universe, avoiding paradoxes like the infamous grandfather paradox. Later in 2010, physicist Seth Lloyd and his team came up with a different approach. They suggested that quantum mechanics itself might allow for a kind of time loop without needing parallel universes. Instead, they used a quantum trick called post-selection, where only certain outcomes are kept while others are discarded. This allowed them to propose a model where quantum information could, in a sense, be sent back in time. Fast forward to today, and researchers are designing real-world experiments to test these ideas. In 2023, a team led by physicists Nicole Younger-Halpern, David Arvidsson-Shakur, and Aidan McConnell came up with a thought experiment involving entangled particles. Their setup involved 4 qubits, tiny quantum bits, that could be entangled and measured in a special sequence to mimic a time loop. Imagine sending a gift to a friend only to receive their wish list a day later. What if you could send a message back in time to adjust the gift before they received it? That's essentially what the experiment does, except instead of gifts, it involves quantum particles aligning their states retroactively. This isn't just a fun thought experiment. Physicists are now building actual experiments to test quantum time loops. In March 2024, researchers demonstrated a way to use a simulated time loop to improve quantum computing efficiency. They showed that quantum information could be sent back to optimize measurements in a way that wouldn't be possible using classical physics. So does this mean time travel is real? Not exactly. These quantum loops work on the microscopic scale, and the effect only happens under very specific conditions. Plus, quantum states are incredibly fragile. Trying to entangle enough atoms to send a human, or even a cat, back in time would be virtually impossible. Even though we won't be traveling to the past anytime soon, these quantum time loops could still have huge implications. They might help us understand the nature of time itself and even bring us closer to a long-sought theory that unites quantum mechanics with Einstein's theory of relativity. And who knows, maybe just maybe future physicists will find a way to tweak the past in small but meaningful ways. Until then, we'll just have to keep dreaming of time machines. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are they already doing that? Are they already manipulating our reality for the future? Okay, guys. Next article I have for you is called "Did Time Flow in Two Directions from the Big Bang?" We all know time moves forward. It's how we age, how memories work, and how things in the universe seem to unfold. But what if time didn't just move forward? What if, at the moment of the Big Bang, it split and flowed in two directions? That's the idea behind a bold new theory that could change how we think about time itself. One of the biggest puzzles in physics is why time only moves forward. Most laws of physics work just as well in reverse. Yet in real life, we never see shattered glass reassembling or people growing younger. The usual explanation is entropy. the tendency of things to move from order to disorder. As the universe expands and entropy increases, time seems to flow forward. But what if this isn't the whole story? Physicist Julian Barber has a different take. He suggests that the Big Bang wasn't the start of time, but a midpoint. Instead of time having a single direction, it might flow outward in two opposite directions from the Big Bang, creating two mirror image universes, each moving forward in their own version of time. From our perspective, we can't see this other universe, but if Barber's theory is right, it should exist as a natural consequence of the laws of physics. Even more radically, Barber suggests that time doesn't come from entropy at all. Instead, he argues that time emerges from the increasing complexity of the universe. As galaxies form and structures grow, time moves forward. This concept, called complexity, could replace entropy as the true driver of time's arrow. His idea comes from a surprising source, an old mathematical result from 1772 by Joseph Louis Lagrange. Lagrange showed that a system of particles interacting under gravity always reaches a state of minimum size before expanding again. If you simulate a simple universe of particles using Newtonian gravity, they tend to cluster, reach a tight formation, and then expand in both directions. Barber calls this point of minimum size the Janus point, after the Roman god with two faces looking in opposite directions. If our universe has a Janus point, then what we see as the Big Bang might actually be the moment of minimum complexity. Everything before it belongs to a different, time-reversed universe that we'll never observe. Instead of assuming that the universe started in a state of low entropy, a convenient but unexplained assumption, Barber's model provides a natural explanation for why time has a direction. And there's more. This theory might even help us understand quantum gravity, the missing link between Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum mechanics. Since quantum mechanics relies on a fixed background time, but relativity treats time as flexible, finding a new definition of time based on complexity could bridge the gap between these two theories. The big question is, can we prove any of this? One potential test comes from studying the cosmic microwave background, CMB, the leftover radiation from the early universe. If Barber's theory is correct, the CMB should show evidence of the universe emerging from a maximally uniform state, with increasing complexity over time. Future observations could confirm or challenge this idea. While it's a long way from proving that time flows in two directions, the idea that time might emerge from structure rather than entropy could reshape our understanding of the universe. And if nothing else, it gives us a fresh way to think about one of the deepest mysteries in physics. I both feel right now like I'm understanding things, but I'm also really confused. I think that's probably why I like this stuff. The next article is, do we create space-time? A new take on the fabric of reality. For the first time, we can look at the quantum world from multiple perspectives at once. This opens up a strange possibility that reality might only take shape when we interact with each other. Imagine walking up to a Renaissance sculpture in a gallery. From far away it's striking, but when you get closer you start to notice the finer details, the curve of the jaw, the elegant nose, the softness of the marble hair. It's only by changing your perspective that you truly appreciate it. This idea of looking at things from different angles is crucial in physics too, and it's led to some major surprises. It all started with Einstein's theory of special relativity, which showed us that space and time are not fixed. They change depending on your perspective. This led to the concept of space-time, a four-dimensional framework where space and time are intertwined. But when quantum theory came into play, things got even weirder. It showed that when we measure things, we influence them. Yet in the quantum world, unlike with relativity, it was always unclear how to reconcile different perspectives to understand reality. A century later, many scientists wonder if a single objective reality even exists. Now, two new ideas are changing that story. For the first time, we can actually move between different quantum perspectives. This is already helping with practical problems like faster communications, and it might also answer the question of whether a shared reality exists in the quantum realm. Interestingly, it seems there is no shared reality at the quantum level until we start communicating. When Einstein developed relativity, he assumed one thing: the laws of physics should be the same for everyone. But there was a problem with light. The laws of electromagnetism dictate that light always travels at the same speed, about 299,792 kilometers per second. But imagine trying to race alongside a beam of light in a spaceship. You'd expect the light to appear slower than usual, just like how cars on the highway seem slower when you're driving fast next to them. But if that was the case, the laws of physics would break down. Einstein realized this couldn't happen, so he proposed that light's speed must be constant for everyone. This meant space and time themselves had to change depending on the observer's perspective. His work eventually led to general relativity, which remains our best theory of gravity. However, it didn't solve everything. In relativity, we measure space and time using physical objects, like rods and clocks. These objects, though, follow different laws governed by quantum theory. Quantum theory, on the other hand, describes particles and energy, and it's even more successful than relativity. But it suggests a strange reality. Particles don't have definite properties until we measure them. They exist in multiple possible states at once, and when particles are entangled, their properties can be connected even across vast distances. This complicates things from measuring time with a quantum clock or distance with a ruler that's in two places at once. Quantum physicists usually sidestep this issue by treating the measuring devices as if they follow the classical laws of physics, not quantum ones. This is called the Heisenberg cut. It's an arbitrary boundary separating quantum and classical worlds. Take Schrödinger's cat, for example. In the thought experiment, a cat is in the box with a radioactive particle. If the particle decays, it kills the cat. If not, the cat lives. From outside the box, the cat is in a superposition, meaning it's both alive and dead at the same time. But shouldn't we be able to describe the situation from the cat's perspective too? This question bothered Czeslaw Bruckner at the Institute for Quantum Optics and Quantum Information in Vienna. He wanted to understand how we can see things from multiple points of view in quantum theory. He started with the idea that the laws of physics should still apply to everyone, and developed a way to mathematically switch between quantum reference frames. Bruckner thought that if we could switch perspectives across the Heisenberg cut, it might reveal something about a shared quantum reality. In 2019, Bruckner and his team discovered something unexpected. When you switch to the cat's perspective, things look different. Just like in relativity, space and time warp to keep the laws of physics intact. From the cat's viewpoint, it's in a definite state, alive or dead, and the observer outside the box is the one in a superposition. What's quantum and what's classical, Bruckner realized, depends entirely on the chosen reference frame. Jacques Pinard at the University of Massachusetts says this insight opens up fascinating possibilities. Take the famous double-slit experiment. where a particle can pass through two slits at once. In Bruckner's model, it's not just the particle that's in superposition, the slits themselves are. Bruckner's ideas have already helped tackle complex problems like those related to quantum communication, but there's still a twist. Wigner's friend. This thought experiment proposed by physicist Eugene Wigner in the 1950s adds a mind-bending element to the cat problem. In this scenario, Wigner's friend opens the box and sees the cat alive, but Wigner, standing outside the lab, still sees the cat in a superposition of alive and dead. The two perspectives seem to conflict, yet according to quantum theory, both are valid. This paradox reveals a splintered reality. Bruckner's framework can't solve this yet. The two people, Wigner and his friend, use different reference frames, so they're not looking at each other from the same vantage point. The communication between them is key. Until they interact, they don't share the same reality. This brings us to the work of Flavio Mercati and Giovanni Amelino Camiglia, who suggest that communication itself might create reality. Inspired by earlier work, they've proposed that as two people exchange quantum information, they actively create space-time. They point to the idea that space-time might be non-commutative, meaning that the order of measurements affects the structure of space. Normally it doesn't matter if you go east and then north or the other way around, but at quantum scales this might not be true. If space-time works in this non-commutative way, then by exchanging quantum information, observers might actually be forging the very space-time they're trying to understand. This raises a profound possibility. Space-time could emerge as a result of quantum communication, rather than being a fixed backdrop. So in a sense, when two observers interact, they collaborate to create their shared reality. Ultimately, these new ideas point to a surprising conclusion. Reality isn't a fixed, pre-existing thing. Instead, it might be something that we help construct through our interactions. When we only look at space-time from one perspective, we miss its full complexity. In fact, there might not even be a deeper shared reality until we start talking to each other, because it's through communication that reality is built. Well, that was really deep, wasn't it? Just like a whole bunch of things just going on in my head after reading that. Just the idea of communication. It also makes me think they're never going to figure this stuff out. There's too many different possibilities. It's crazy. And kind of magical. So, the next article I have for you guys is called "The Leap Second, a Thing of the Past." And I believe this article was written in 2015, just to help put things into perspective. On the evening of Tuesday, June 30th, at precisely 23 hours, 59 minutes and 60 seconds, our clocks will pause for a second to sync Earth's rotation with atomic time. But with our fast-moving world, is it time for a new way to keep track of time? According to ChatGPT, this specific leap second on June 30th was the 27th since the system was introduced in 1972. I showed up late to a meeting about time measurement, ironically. I got lost in London trying to find the Royal Institute of Navigation. The mathematician Roger Penrose, a big deal at the University of Oxford, was already there, looking a little puzzled by my tardiness. After a while he decided the meeting wasn't getting to the heart of the issue, and he pulled out early. It was just the beginning of an ongoing debate about the future of leap seconds. A leap second is a small adjustment made to keep Earth's spinning time in line with atomic time, which is more precise. This June marks the first leap second since 2012, and it's a big topic for discussion. Some people think leap seconds are a historical link to astronomy that we shouldn't lose, while others argue it's outdated and impractical in today's high-speed, tech-driven world. The UK government even held a consultation to see where the world stands on this issue. Here's the reason for leap seconds. Earth's rotation isn't perfectly consistent. The pull from the moon and sun is gradually slowing down our planet's spin. Atmospheric effects and even the shifting of Earth's molten core cause further unpredictable variations. For much of history, a day was defined as a full rotation of Earth, but as time went on, we needed a more accurate way to measure it. That's why in the 1960s, atomic clocks were introduced, measuring seconds based on the vibration of atoms, specifically cesium-133 atoms. This new system led to the creation of leap seconds in 1972, as Earth's time and atomic time began drifting apart. Today we rely on Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, which combines both atomic and astronomical time. Every time Earth's spin drifts by more than 0.9 seconds, the International Earth Rotation and Reference Systems Service, the IERS, calls for an extra second, and that's how the leap second came about. But not everyone is happy with this system. According to Felicitas Arias, head of the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, BIPM, it's outdated and causes serious issues for industries that require precise synchronization. The tech world is especially vocal on this issue. Software glitches have caused issues in the past. For example, in 2012, Qantas reservation system crashed due to a leap second adjustment. Some fear this could get worse, with more significant failures in things like air traffic control or military systems. On the flip side, some tech experts like Marcus Kahn from Cambridge believe the problem is overstated. Systems have already adapted to things like daylight saving time adjustments, so why couldn't they handle a leap second? The debate is ongoing. The US, France, and Germany seem to favour getting rid of leap seconds, while the UK, Canada, and Russia want to keep them. The decision is tricky because the International Telecommunication Union insists on consensus before making any global changes. So does it really matter if we keep leap seconds or not? The sun's rise time would shift a bit over the centuries, but for most of us that's not a big deal. Still, some believe there's something culturally significant about linking time with the Earth's natural cycles. After all, we've been keeping time this way for centuries. Some companies like Google argue that eliminating leap seconds would make their systems run more smoothly. However, they've already figured out how to adjust for them, so it's not a huge problem. Other companies like BT in the UK still add the leap second as needed. The difference is small, but it does pose challenges for things like legal or financial timestamps where accuracy matters. Looking forward, some experts propose keeping two time systems, one for atomic time and one for Earth-based time. That way, systems that just need to measure elapsed time, like power companies, can use a simple atomic time system, while the rest of us can still follow Earth-based time if needed. Roger Penrose, on the other hand, has a radical suggestion. Let's start from scratch. He proposes a new time system based purely on atomic clocks, defined from a universal 0 point. He suggests using the regular pulses from neutron stars, called pulsars, to keep our link to the cosmos. This way, different countries could set their clocks relative to this new system. Timekeeping could be simpler and we wouldn't need leap seconds at all. In the end, it seems like the leap seconds future is still up in the air. The UK public consultation, published in September 2014, found that most people didn't care either way. Technology companies like Google are fine with scrapping them, while others like the UK still hold on to the idea. With the decision delayed until the next international conference, we're left wondering if this is the last leap second or just another debate that will go on for years. Oh, okay, I just Googled it. According to Wikipedia, after many years of discussion by different standards bodies, in November 2022, at the 27th General Conference on Weights and Measures, it was decided to abandon the leap second by or before 2035. I feel like they did that because that's what tech wanted. You know, they're just going to do whatever big tech wants. Like, I wonder why they couldn't just make the adjustment when the daylight savings time comes around. They need to adjust. That seems like a good time to do it because everyone's already adjusting anyway. But what do I know? And the last article I'm going to read for you guys is sort of similar to what I've done in previous videos like this, where some type of scientist or physicist gives their recommendations for like the 10 best movies. And these ones are about the 10 best time travel movies, according to a metaphysicist. Number 10 on the list is Midnight in Paris from 2011. While most time travel movies focus on how time travel works, Midnight in Paris is more about nostalgia. It follows Gil, a screenwriter who visits Paris with his girlfriend. Every night at midnight, he's transported back to the 1920s, where he meets literary and artistic icons. This movie isn't about changing the past, but longing for it, an exploration of how we romanticize past eras. Gil learns that we often think of the past as the golden age, forgetting that we're always prone to looking back and wishing for something different. That's what makes this film unique. It shows time travel as a way to revisit rather than alter history. Number 9, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. This movie is a great example of what metaphysicians call consistent time travel. In Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Bill and Ted don't change the past, but interact with it in a way that doesn't alter the timeline. A key scene involves the duo traveling back in time to leave themselves keys they'll need in the future, creating a perfect loop. This is a classic time travel scenario where the past always includes the actions of the travelers. Nothing ever really changes, it just unfolds in a way that seems circular. And of course, number 8, Back to the Future. This is a time travel classic, and it's one of the most well-known examples of inconsistent time travel. Marty McFly goes back in time and accidentally messes with his parents' past, putting his own existence in jeopardy. The future Marty starts to unravel, and he must ensure his parents fall in love to save his future. This movie touches on the grandfather paradox, the idea that if you change something in the past, you might erase your own existence. While this scenario is impossible, it makes for a thrilling and fun movie. And number 7 is About Time, from 2013. I haven't heard of that one. In About Time, the protagonist, Tim, discovers he can travel back in time to fix small mistakes. He finds that changing the past, even in little ways, dramatically alters his present and future. The film is less about time travel mechanics and more about examining how we value our moments. As Tim tweaks the past to protect loved ones, he learns that the present is precious exactly as it is, and maybe it's the imperfections that make it worth living. Number 6, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This mind-bending film isn't exactly about time travel, but it's all about the idea of exploring different versions of life. Evelyn, the protagonist, hops between different universes where different choices lead to different outcomes. It's a reflection on the infinite number of paths life could take depending on the decisions we make, making us wonder about the lives we might have had under different circumstances. Number 5, The Time Traveler's Wife. In this movie, Henry involuntarily time travels, jumping between moments in his life in a non-linear way. This consistent time travel story explores the intimate relationship between Henry and Claire, who meet at various stages of their lives. It's a poignant look at how we form connections and what it means to live when the timeline isn't fixed, making us question how we experience and interact with time. Number 4, Interstellar. Interstellar brings a bit of real science into time travel with its take on time dilation. The plot follows Joseph Cooper, who travels through a wormhole in search of a new home for humanity. Due to the massive gravitational effects of a black hole, Cooper experiences time differently, leading to a dramatic time lapse between his mission and the people waiting for him. The movie's take on traveling to the future rather than the past is rooted in real physics, and it's the closest we get to time travel as we understand it. I might have to watch that one again. 3, Tenet. Christopher Nolan's Tenet is a complex film that stretches the concept of time travel to its limits. Instead of traveling through time, people and objects in this film move backwards through time due to inverted entropy. This idea, though difficult to grasp, is grounded in real physics. The concept that every process that happens in one direction can theoretically be reversed. The movie's depiction of time inversion creates fascinating action sequences where characters experience the world in reverse while the audience sees it in real time. It's definitely a movie that requires multiple viewings to fully understand. I haven't seen that one either. That was from 2020, but I know the name and I know Christopher Nolan. Number 2 is 12 Monkeys. 12 Monkeys is another example of consistent time travel, but it also introduces the idea of a causal loop. James Cole is sent back in time to investigate a virus outbreak that's caused a global disaster in the future. While he's not there to prevent it, he ends up unwittingly being part of the chain of events that leads to the epidemic. In the end, the organization behind the outbreak is one he helps create in the past, making it a perfect loop. The film plays with the concept of time and fate, asking whether we can ever really change the future. And number 1, Predestination from 2014. I haven't heard of that one either. My top pick is Predestination, a brilliant film based on the story by Robert Heinlein. This film features a mind-bending time travel paradox where one person plays multiple roles across time. The protagonist, Jane, becomes John, and both characters play crucial roles in their own creation. This complex narrative explores the tension between free will and predestination, questioning whether we have control over our fate or if time is simply a loop we're caught in. What do you guys think? That's the end. That's all I've got for you. Well, hopefully you know a little bit more about time. I know I do. So that's the end of the video, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to see you guys again and be interacting with you again. And yeah, I hope to see you very soon.